The historical record, as we've been taught it, often presents a simplified narrative. We are told a story that begins with a small number of enslaved Africans, around 350,000, and ends with a modern population of over 40 million Black Americans. This account, as you've observed, seems to defy the laws of demography. But when we pull back the curtain and look closer, we find a history far more complex and complete than the official story lets on. The traditional explanation, often repeated in history books, is one of extraordinary resilience and natural increase. Historians point to the unique demographic trajectory of the enslaved population in British North America and later the United States. Unlike the brutal conditions of the Caribbean or Brazil, where death rates were devastatingly high and required a constant influx of newly enslaved people to maintain the population, the conditions in the American colonies, while still horrifyingly inhumane, allowed for a measure of population growth. Enslaved women gave birth, and their children were, by law, born into the same bondage. This generational cycle, over the course of more than a century and a half, saw the initial group of approximately 350,000 multiply exponentially. By the time of the Civil War in 1860, census records show that the enslaved and free Black population had grown to nearly 4 million people. After emancipation, that population continued to grow, fueled by high birth rates, until it reached today's numbers. The math, when you calculate a consistent rate of growth over 4 centuries, does, in fact, hold up. The official narrative says this growth is a testament to an unparalleled demographic expansion. But what if the starting point was never as small as we were led to believe? What if the official history is missing key chapters? To find a more complete story, we have to look for a record that predates the arrival of the first English ships. We have to consider a history of a people who were not only victims of the transatlantic slave trade, but were also explorers, sailors, and even native inhabitants of the Americas. One of the most compelling and debated chapters concerns the possibility of pre-Columbian contact. Around the year 1311, the powerful West African Empire of Mali was led by a man named Abu Bakr II, brother to the famous Mansa Musa. According to the accounts of Mansa Musa himself, as recorded by Arab historian Al-Amari, Abu Bakr II was an ambitious navigator. He reportedly outfitted a fleet of hundreds of ships with men, supplies, and provisions and set sail into the Atlantic, determined to find its limit. He never returned. While this account remains a subject of intense academic debate, it opens a window to the possibility of West African knowledge of the American continents long before Columbus's voyage. If these accounts are even partially true, they suggest a presence of people of African descent on these shores more than a century before 1492. But the story of a hidden past continues even after Columbus's arrival. The history of Africans in the Americas isn't solely a history of slavery. From the very beginning of the European exploration and conquest of the continent, free and enslaved people of African descent were present. They came as sailors, navigators, and conquistadors with the Spanish and Portuguese. One of the most famous examples is Juan Garrido, an African-born conquistador who arrived in the Americas in 1502. He fought with Hernán Cortés during the conquest of Mexico in the 1520s, and his signature appears on official documents from that era. Africans also traveled with Ponce de Leon to Florida in the early 1500s and helped establish Spanish settlements in New Mexico. In what is now Chicago, the first recorded non-native person to settle there was a Haitian man of African descent named Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, who established a trading post in the 1770s. These individuals were pioneers, explorers, and settlers whose stories often remain on the margins of mainstream history. And then there is the deepest, most complex chapter of all, a history of a people whose roots in the Americas were already established. This is the story of Black Native Americans. For centuries, African and Native American peoples lived in close proximity, forging alliances, sharing culture, and intermarrying. Enslaved Africans who escaped their bondage often found refuge with Native American tribes, creating unique and powerful communities. The most well-known example is the Black Seminoles, a community that formed in Florida during the 1700s and 1800s. They were an alliance of escaped slaves and the Seminole people, who fought together against American encroachment in the 19th century in a series of bloody conflicts known as the Seminole Wars. This is a powerful, undeniable record of a people who were not only present, but were also a foundational part of the American landscape, often fighting for their freedom and survival on the front lines. Furthermore, this history also reveals a crucial point about how the Black population was counted. In the 19th century, under the prevailing customs of North America, the Black Seminoles, despite their mixed heritage and their own distinct identity, were often externally classified as Negroes by the U.S. government, particularly on census and tribal rolls. This act of reclassification folded a population that had its own unique, indigenous history into the broader Black demographic, further contributing to the official count and demonstrating that the numbers we see today are the result of not only population growth, but also complex racial politics and redefinition. When we consider these forgotten chapters, the potential for pre-Columbian voyages, the presence of free Africans in the earliest European expeditions, and the deep, enduring ties between Black and Native American peoples and their subsequent reclassification, the story changes. The base population of people of African descent in the Americas may have been far larger, and their roots far older, than the official narrative of the transatlantic slave trade suggests. The history of Black America isn't just a story of arrival and bondage. It is a story of exploration, resilience, and a people whose origins in the Americas may stretch back much further than we're told. And so we are left with a question that echoes through time. Is the history of a people's origin in America a simple, tragic story of forced migration, or is there a missing record of a people whose roots in this land are as old and complex as the continent itself? The answer, as the historical record slowly reveals, appears to be a much deeper and more extraordinary tale. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and subscribe to the Black Vault for more History Unlocked.